Hello everyone! Today I want to share an incredible story from the early days of personal computers that feels like a real-life spy thriller. It is about how a small startup called Compaq took on the giant IBM and won by using clever engineering in a secret room. To fully appreciate this tale, let us first travel back to the late 1970s and early 1980s, when the world of computing was changing fast. At that time, computers were mostly big machines used by companies or hobbyists building their own from kits. But then, in 1977, Apple released the Apple II, a ready-to-use computer that anyone could buy and plug in at home. It became popular, but it was expensive and aimed at enthusiasts. Many people tried to copy the Apple II to make cheaper versions. For example, in Taiwan and other places, companies made unauthorized clones, like the Pineapple or Orange computers. These copies looked similar and ran some software, but they often had problems. One famous failed attempt was the Franklin Ace 1000 in 1982, which copied the Apple II so closely that Apple sued them and won. The lesson from these early clones was clear. Copying too directly could lead to legal trouble, and incomplete copies often crashed. In 1981, everything shifted when IBM, the biggest name in business computers, entered the personal computer market. They launched the IBM Personal Computer, or PC for short. Companies trusted IBM, so they bought these PCs in huge numbers for offices. The IBM PC used an Intel 8088 processor, and it ran Microsoft's DOS operating system. IBM used standard parts from other companies. They even published a detailed technical manual that explained how everything worked. This openness was unusual for IBM, but helped the PC become the standard. Within a year, over 200,000 units sold. However, the IBM PC was pricey, around $3,000, and not everyone could afford one. Many smaller companies saw an opportunity to make cheaper versions. But there was a major hurdle standing in the way: the BIOS. The BIOS is like the computer starter kit, a small program that handles the basics when you turn on the machine, managing the keyboard and screen. Most importantly, all the popular software at the time, like Lotus 123, talked directly to the BIOS. It had to behave exactly the same way. IBM wrote their own BIOS code and protected it with copyright. They printed the code listing in their manual, but copying it directly was a trap. Several early copycats tried just that and got into legal trouble. For instance, Corona Data Systems and Eagle PC both faced lawsuits or bugs. This is where Compaq entered the picture with a smarter plan. Let us meet the founders: Rod Kenyon, Jim Harris, and Bill Myrtle. In late 1981, they quit their jobs at Texas Instruments to start something new with only $100,000 in startup money. They wanted to make a compatible computer that was better or cheaper. Their big twist was to focus on portability, a machine you could carry like a suitcase. To make it fully compatible, they had to crack the BIOS puzzle legally. Compaq chose a path called reverse engineering, done like a secret mission. Reverse engineering means building your own version from scratch. Compaq turned this into a spy-like operation with a clean room approach. Team A, the dirty room team, tested every function without looking at the code itself. They noted exactly what happened when they ran experiments. They built a huge list of specifications, like how many bytes were returned for each signal. But they never touched the actual BIOS code. Then came Team B in the clean room. This was like a fortified lab. No one from Team A could enter, and Team B never saw the IBM code. Their mission was to write brand new code matching every function perfectly. They pored over specs, writing assembly language for the Intel processor. Imagine the tension. Engineers working late nights, coffee cups everywhere. Compaq spent $1 million on this effort, a huge risk for a startup. After 9 grueling months, in the fall of 1982, they succeeded. Their new BIOS was 100% compatible and original. Now they could build the Compaq Portable. It weighed 28 pounds, the size of a sewing machine, with a handle for carrying. You could close it like a briefcase and take it on a plane. Back then, this portability was revolutionary for traveling salespeople. In November 1982, at a trade show, the reaction was electric. People were amazed that this machine ran IBM software perfectly. Sales exploded. In their first year, Compaq made $55 million, becoming the fastest growing startup in history. This success inspired other companies. Phoenix Technologies later created a clean room BIOS that could be licensed by any manufacturer. This helped many companies, including Dell, build fully compatible PC clones. Here is an interesting historical fact. The first fully compatible clone of the IBM personal computer was not made by Compaq. The first company to build a compatible machine was Columbia Data Products. They released their computer in 1982. However, the machine did not become a big success. Later, Compaq entered the market with better quality and much stronger marketing. Because of this, many people remember Compaq as the company that truly started the PC clone revolution. How IBM tried to take back control of the PC world. In the early 1980s, something unexpected happened in the computer world. The IBM personal computer became extremely popular. Businesses trusted the name IBM. So many companies started buying these machines for their offices. For a short time, it looked like IBM would control the entire personal computer market. But soon, other companies discovered something very important. The IBM computer was built mostly from standard parts. The processor came from Intel. The operating system came from Microsoft in the form of MS-DOS. This meant something surprising. If another company used the same parts, they could build a compatible computer. And that is exactly what happened. Companies like Compaq proved it could be done legally. They created computers that were fully compatible with IBM software. But they built the machines themselves. Customers noticed these new computers were often cheaper than IBM machines. Sometimes they were even faster. This created a huge opportunity. More and more companies began producing IBM-compatible computers. Suddenly the market filled with new brands. And customers loved the choice. Because all these computers were compatible, the same programs worked everywhere. Popular software ran perfectly. The effect was dramatic. By the middle of the 1980s, the clone market was growing very fast. New computer companies appeared almost every year. And many of them were making good money. But this created a serious problem for IBM. They had started the revolution, but others were benefiting. Slowly, IBM realized something worrying. They were no longer in control of the standard they created. So IBM decided to change the rules. In 1987, they introduced a new generation of computers. The machines were called the IBM Personal System/2. Many people simply call them the PS/2. At first glance, these computers look similar. But inside, something very important had changed. Earlier computers used an expansion system called ISA. It was simple and it was open. Any hardware company could design expansion cards for it. This openness helped the industry grow. But IBM wanted to regain control. So in the PS/2, they introduced a new system called microchannel. From a technical point of view, microchannel was impressive. It was faster and more modern than ISA. But there was one difference. IBM owned the patents. Any company using it had to pay licensing fees. In other words, the clone manufacturers would no longer be free to copy the design. They would depend on IBM again. Companies like Compaq and Dell would have to depend on IBM. IBM hoped the entire industry would follow. But the other companies had a different idea. Several manufacturers decided to work together. They formed a group to design their own architecture. Their goal was simple: keep the platform open. This new standard became known as ISA. It was designed to be faster, but kept compatibility with older hardware. And most importantly, it was open. Many manufacturers continued building machines without microchannel. Slowly, the market made its decision. Hardware makers, software developers, and customers all preferred the open system. As the years passed, the clone market continued to grow. The personal computer became part of everyday life. By the early 1990s, IBM no longer dominated. Instead, the center of the industry had shifted. Two companies became extremely powerful: Microsoft and Intel. They provided the software and the processors. The IBM-compatible PC became the global standard. Ironically, the system IBM created grew beyond their control. The open architecture had become stronger than any single company. That moment helped shape the modern industry. A small engineering decision opened the door for competition and billions of computers around the world. If you enjoyed this story, please consider supporting the channel. Leave a comment and tell me what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more technology stories. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.